We're really happy to welcome you here today to our session on investing in adolescence, a summer perspective from Chicago. I'm particularly passionate about this topic, hailing from Chicago and having spent my teen years here. So thrilled to have you all here. I'm going to take a little bit of time to introduce the hosts here and our panelists. While I'm doing so, if you want to take some time to introduce yourselves in the chat, let us know where you are from, what location that you're in, and what organization that you work with. We'd love to hear that. If you want to maybe put a note in on your perspective on summer and adolescence in particular, we'd love to hear that. Please feel free to use the chat throughout the session. We love to hear from you, and we'll be monitoring that and engaging with you. So again, I'm Deb Maroney with the American Institutes for Research. We are proud partners in the Readiness Projects, along with the National Urban League and the Forum for Youth Investment. A little primer on the Readiness Projects, if you haven't joined us before. We bolster projects that support the readiness of youth, adults, systems, and community leaders. We do so with a particular focus on adolescents and their pathways to thriving through ecosystemic approaches, which we're going to get to hear about today. Through the Readiness Projects Build Forward Together initiative, school districts and community partners are working collaboratively to create equitable learning and development ecosystems that unleash the potential of all learners, recognize the power of all committed adults, and we're going to hear from some of those committed adults today, and optimize all learning settings and approaches. So that's a little bit about us. I love hearing from all of you in the chat. Please keep it coming. For those of you who were with us last time at the last Build Forward Together Summer Challenge, we talked about younger youth or children and their summertime experiences. Today, we're going to have a particular focus on adolescence and why adolescence. Well, adolescence we know is a time of great opportunity. We're talking in particular about youth ages 12 to 24. And we say that because we now understand that that developmental period lasts longer than we used to think it did. And for any of you who've spent time with 18 to 24-year-olds, I think that will resonate with you. Adolescence is a time of remarkable opportunity. It's particularly a sensitive time in brain development. We know that young people at this age love to have fun and take healthy and sometimes unhealthy risks. And that young people are highly sensitive to and deserve our respect and are a force for good. So we're thrilled to have this focus today and talk about teenagers in the summertime. Why are we talking about Chicago? Beyond that, I'm totally passionate about Chicago and our colleagues are here today. Chicago is a great model or example of how organizations, both public, private, or I should say all public, private, and nonprofit, have come together to support young people in the summer prior to the compound crises of these past year, but in particular in response to the compound crises of these past year, and they'll talk about that. So without further ado, who are these wonderful people joining us today? One is a good and old colleague and friend, Melissa Mister, who is the Chief Program Officer with After School Matters here in Chicago. Ebony Campbell, who is a Senior Director and Resident Services at Chicago Housing Authority. I think we'll all be really interested to learn how housing authorities support young people and partner in particular. And Jeremy Dunn, Director of our Teen Services with the Chicago Public Library. I spent a lot of time in library-related activities. For those of you who know me, won't be surprised to hear that when I was growing up. So we're thrilled also to have Jeremy Dunn here. These organizations do wonderful things on their own, but of course we are passionate about ecosystemic approaches. And so they're here today to talk about how they work together in One Summer Chicago, which brings together government institutions, community-based organizations, and companies to offer over 200,000 employment and internship opportunities to youth and young adults age 13 to 24 here in Chicago. And I am really pleased to pass the microphone the virtual microphone over to my great colleague, Jill Young, a co-Chicagoan, someone who's really a partner with me in this endeavor to elevate the voices and experiences of young people in Chicago and nationwide. So with that, Jill, I'll pass it to you, and I'll be hanging out in the chat box with the rest of you. Enjoy.
Thank you, Deb. So my name is Jill Young. I am a senior researcher at the American Institute for Research, AIR, and I am based in Chicago. And if you are as well, then you maybe saw the snow earlier, which was a little bit hard to handle, even though I know that's kind of typical for Chicago. You never know what you can expect. I am really excited to be here today. I am excited to shine a light on my hometown, Chicago, and to talk about how the city is investing in older youth. And we're talking to some of my favorite people about the wonderful work that they do and that their organizations are doing to support adolescents this summer. So before I came to AIR, I worked at After School Matters for several years, and I got to know Melissa through that work. I also got to know Ebony and Jeremy through our work together on the One Summer Chicago initiative. So at this point, I think I've known you guys for like a decade, which is just crazy. So I'm so grateful that they're joining us for this discussion today. I promise to try to keep my incessant smiling to a minimum because I am so excited to have these folks with us. So I think they are going to be joining us here on screen, but I am going to have Melissa start us out. So Melissa, After School Matters and AIR, we recently worked together on an analysis of the After School Matters Summer 2020 programs. So I'm hoping you could tell us a little bit about After School Matters, but also about what you learned about teens' experiences during the pandemic.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jill, and thanks, Deb. And it's I think this is a good start because it's a mutual love affair all around. So there's nothing but good feelings to start the meeting off. So After School Matters, we provide after school and summer programs for 14 to 18-year-olds for teens in Chicago. And we recently partnered with AIR to do an analysis of After School Matters Summer 2020, a big and very different summer. And so we'll share some of the findings. It was really great to be able to put some data and research behind what we had preliminarily heard from our teens, and so that we could use that information to make plans for going forward, and really to do just what we're doing today is to share it so that it could be of value to all of us who are in this work together. And I think we're gonna pop a presentation up that will walk us through some of the findings, unless you wanna. All right, so we can quickly go through. I'm going to severely truncate what was a lot of information, and I think we're happy to share this information for people who want to dig into it a little bit deeper. So again, we partnered with AIR to research what it was that our teens were experiencing this summer. And just a little bit of context, we had about almost 10,000 teens in program, about 4,000 of them were surveyed. Similarly, we had about 700 some instructors, and about half of them responded to the survey. We can keep moving. And so this slide here just talks a little bit about where our teens live. So we super proudly serve teens who are in some of the most under-resourced communities in the city of Chicago, and our teens experience higher rates of COVID and the food insecurity and higher levels of stress. And, you know, every time we presented this, we preface it by saying none of this is rocket science or surprising. Unfortunately, a lot of these things come as a package deal to some of our communities. And so that's why we feel like we are need to serve them most. And we can keep going. Again, I'm going to speed through, but we're happy to share. So we wanted to get a sense of what our teens were dealing with, what they were doing. So you'll see on this slide, a lot of the teens reported that they were taking care of younger siblings. Many said that they were home alone, their parents had to work or that kind of thing. Lots of teens reporting that they were stressed out or experiencing significant stress. And some had experiences where family members had contracted COVID or worse, were hospitalized or even passed away. We can keep moving. This was really telling for us. 1 in 3 teens screened positive for food insecurity this summer. That's a big deal. And later on, we'll talk a little bit about some of the new partnerships that developed this year. And one of them was around providing food. When you hear that 1 in 3 of the teens that you serve are suffering from food insecurity, you can't not do something or seek out partnerships to address that. On the flip side, it was really, really gratifying and wonderful to learn that our teens reported that they had positive program experiences. So their programs, gave them something good to do with their time. They still were able to try new things. They still were able to explore their interests. All the things that we set out to do were still happening in the remote setting. And I can't tell you enough about the work that it took to translate all the programs into the remote setting, but it was really great to hear that we were still having some similar outcomes compared to when we were in person. We can advance. So another data point that Jill is obviously really familiar with, considering that she comes from after-school matters, is that we always measure skills gained from programs, and we saw that before and after the teens said that they were still being able to gain skills even though their programs were online. So these are all the things that we look at. We're looking for teens to gain 21st century learning skills no matter what program content area they're focused on, and they still reported that they gained new skills in their remote setting. And you'll see here, these are the range of skills that we measure. This is a really important data point. So teens said they had high belonging scores, so that they felt safe in their program, they felt that they were successful in their program, they were comfortable in their program. And I think at a time when people generally are feeling so disconnected, for teens to say at a high level, not just to say, but at a high level, that they had high senses of belonging meant a ton to us. And I think this slide, as simple as it is maybe the most important. The more teens felt they belonged, the less stress they felt. So that if we accomplished nothing else except to say teens felt like they belonged in programs, and that meant that they were less stressed, that's something to have us say, whatever the circumstances are, we all look forward to being back in in-person programs, but remote programs also were able to address this need. And I think, again, simple slide, but really important information. We can keep moving. So the other group that we care a tremendous amount about is our instructors. So our instructor mentors play a critical role. They are amazing. They were so creative in the ways that they translated their programs. I could tell you a million stories, but I've been given 3 to 5 minutes to go through this slide about the level of creativity that instructors brought to the table when it came to translating just a wide range of programs to the remote setting. And again, we care a lot about how they experienced all of this. We care a lot about making sure that they felt supported and that we were successful in all of our efforts to support them. What we found is that, a lot of instructors, more than 6 in 10, said that they or someone in their household had lost a job. They also reported high levels of food insecurity, which was of concern to us as well. And then our instructors are also feeling stressed, and we found that they didn't have access to mental health supports. And if they didn't have access, they were more likely to fill out. This, again, is the bright side of things. Instructors felt like despite it all, they had successful summers. So they felt like they were able to translate the program to the remote setting. They were able to reach the teens. They were able to have successful summers, generally speaking, and they felt that they were supported well by ASM to be ready. So there was so much that had to do with not just running a program like they're used to, but the technology that it took and being well versed in how to engage young people online. It's different. It takes a lot more planning. It takes a lot more preparation. And we had to be sensitive to all of that, even in terms of the number of hours that were allotted to do planning for programs. So again, this is something that brought us great joy and happiness, is that, all the work was not for nothing. The instructors really appreciated it and felt like they were ready, and the teens really gained a lot from the summer experience. We'll keep going. So this is more of the same. Again, I'm speeding through it, but this is more information similarly stating how instructors felt supported and that the summer overall was a success. So I think this is a really important slide. This is where we looked at the information to say, so what's next? What do we need to do? I mentioned food insecurity being of great concern, so that we've done food distribution now for well over a year. So we've developed some strong partnerships with several different entities to make sure that we're able to distribute food. There's way over 100,000 meals have been distributed to our teens and families. We've also developed some partnerships for mental health supports. We have a really great partnership that I couldn't be more proud of with Adler University to make sure that teens have reliable access to high quality mental health supports. So we know that they're struggling with stress. We know they're struggling with being disconnected. We know that there's a ton of crazy things going on in the world and that they are more stressed out than is typical. And so that we want to be able to make sure that not only the instructors feel prepared to be in front of young people as they go through all of this, but that they also have an avenue for making sure that teens can get additional support where necessary. The other thing is that we wanted to make sure that we continue to offer training and resources on facilitating anti-racist practice, supportive practices, minimizing learning loss and that kind of thing for teens. And we will continue to make sure that we are collecting information about teens as we go. I think one of the things we realized is that you could do a survey during this last year at one point in time, and 3 months later, it's different. And another month later, it's different because it really has been a roller coaster of sorts. And so it just reaffirmed that it's really important to collect information from those who we serve on a very, very regular basis. And again, that was like a lightning speed walk through the data. We learned a ton. We're looking forward to continuing to work with AIR to get more information, again, because it does change. Times change and situations change, and we have to stay as abreast as is possible of all that our populations are experiencing.
Thanks so much, Melissa. I think what definitely struck me as well while we were working together on this report is just, you know, we know young people are going through so much, but they are telling us what they need and they're telling us how to support them, and they're doing it with such resilience. So thanks for sharing that. Let's talk more about how your organizations are partnering and how you're co-creating some new programs. And Ebony, I want to turn this question over to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about Chicago Housing Authority and how you're engaging teens this summer and what you've learned during the pandemic?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jill. I guess I'll start by saying that we certainly aren't the typical One Summer Chicago partner in that we are a houser. And so our primary goal is supporting healthy communities, healthy families, and households through safe and affordable housing. But we certainly see ourselves as a youth serving organization in that nearly half of our resident population are children, youth, and emerging adults between the ages of 0 to 24. So it's incredibly important to us to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our youngest residents, in particular, the development of their academic achievement, because we know that there is a connection between affordable housing and education. And so one of the ways that we do that is through a really robust portfolio of paid summer opportunities that extend beyond just wages for young people 13 to 24. Our goal is really to provide some early career exposure to educational pathways as well, and opportunities that we think will have lifelong impact on our participants. And we'll talk a little bit more in this session and during the breakout about some of our specific programs. But the goals are to stem summer learning loss by developing building blocks, or to help them think about or launch a potential career. So this summer, we're incredibly excited. We have 10 opportunities in place, again, some of which I'll talk about here in this session later. But I think you asked a question about last year, Jill, during the pandemic. And I would say that for us, our approach to programming prior to last year was all in person. It was all place-based programming. Obviously, during the pandemic and the subsequent shelter-in-place order, we couldn't do that anymore. So we had to make a major shift, not only in programming, but also in our thinking about if we could do this, how we might do this, and how important and critical it was to in fact do this. So in that sense, we had to confront a lot of things, particularly our own outdated ways of doing things, our own ableism, in a sense, requiring folks to be in person, to be somewhere in order to participate in programming. And I mean, that really doesn't make sense anymore. It doesn't have to be that way. And we did come to learn that as a result of participating in the program, some young people that were people with disabilities were able to participate in a way that they hadn't before. And anecdotally, we know that some of our participants reported feeling much safer and being able to be themselves in a remote learning environment. So it was a win for us and our participants that we hadn't been able to engage before in programming. And I would say more than that, we were able to partner with some organizations in a different way. For instance, with the Chicago Public Library, they were really generous in loaning us about 50 hotspots and 30 laptops for some of our youth who didn't have access to devices or reliable internet, which allowed them to participate in our programming this summer.
Thanks so much, Ebony. And to Deb's point, I'm not sure that many people would think about a housing organization as part of the learning and development ecosystem, but Chicago Housing Authority very much is so in our city. So thanks for being here. And Jeremy, I am going to turn it over to you because the libraries are also part of our learning and development ecosystem. And I know that you guys ran some hybrid programs this summer. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about Chicago Public Libraries and your programs for teens, how you guys are engaging teens, and how you guys have adjusted during the pandemic.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jill. It's great to be here today. And awesome to be in a room with people from across the US who are focused on youth services. Chicago Public Library Teen Services is relatively a new department formed in 2014, really built on the success of our U-Media program, which was launched in 2009 to really think about how can youth leverage, then kind of the newness of the internet and web-based technologies to expand their learning ecosystem. And that research resulted in really a new type of library service for youth. And since 2014, we've been adding staff to the Chicago Public Library and teen library positions, and expanding our U-Media program, which is really built on what we call Hamago, hanging out, messing around, and geeking out, as a way of thinking about how youth engage in learning and how mentors, librarians, caring adults form effective relationships with youth. And we know our program is really successful because teens keep coming back to the library day after day. Our summer internship program started 6 years ago, and pre-pandemic, we were hiring 125 youth to work at the library in the summer in a variety of internship positions. And I think it's important to note that the Chicago Public Library is able to offer these first in great partnership with After School Matters, and because it's our library staff who are serving as internship supervisors. So when the pandemic hit and we were a year ago trying to think, what is this summer going to look like? We decided that, with the support we had from ASM and from other partners, that we were going to do our best to host as many internships as possible. And last summer, we ended up hosting 48 teen internships across 12 of our library locations. And there were challenges, and I can say, looking back, we had great success. We figured out the technology, and we figured out how to prepare our staff for a very different type of supervisory activity, because they were used to the teens being in the branches, having a variety of different types of activities, because you're in a physical location, and the library, of course, is made up of a lot of different moving parts. But we were, moving into just a Zoom-based environment, and we had to think about, how to restructure. So, we figured that out with our partners, and the research that Melissa reviewed, we are a microcosm of that, because we are part of the ASM summer, and it's just highly reflective of everything that we learned from our teens and our supervisors about how they were able to connect with youth and provide a really great experience. So we learn so much from all of our partners in our ecosystem here in Chicago, and frankly across the U.S. We're also involved in the UMedia Learning Lab Network, which there are UMedia programs at different libraries and museums in cities across the U.S. So we try to learn from all of our partners in ways that we can continue to engage with teens in a way that's meaningful, and especially in this new kind of environment where we have been relegated to kind of a virtual only format.
Thank you for that, Jeremy. I love that, Humago. I think adults need that too. That's really great. So all three of you highlighted, talked about this, and you've all partnered together for years as part of the One Summer Chicago initiative, but you're finding new ways to partner. And so I would love to have Melissa and Ebony tell us a little bit more about how After School Matters and Chicago Housing Authority are partnering on the Learn and Earn initiative.
Ebony, I can jump in if you want her.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll start and give a frame, Melissa,
There you
because I
go.
want you to talk about what will be for Learn and Earn. But Learn and Earn is our program, one of our longest running programs that will be in its 13th year this year. It's our ongoing effort to mitigate summer slide for middle adolescents, particularly those students who are making the transition from elementary to high school, and our opportunity to expose them to a variety of post-secondary pathways. And so we do target 13 through 15-year-olds for this program. We started in, I want to say 2008, and we had a total of 140 students at community-based organizations across the city. And in recent years, we've had up to 700 students at 7 city colleges of Chicago. But this year, we are incredibly excited to partner with After School Matters to deliver and really reimagine this program. As you could see and tell from Melissa's presentation, they have deep youth development expertise and a demonstrated impact on the lives of teens. So we are incredibly thrilled to be working with them this year on Learn and Earn.
Yeah. And I think Ebony summarized it perfectly. The only thing I would add is that so we really are focusing on making sure that the teens in the program get the opportunity to explore their career and field interest via the project-based programs and get the skills practice over the summer. And then the big piece is being able to connect the two of them, because there's there's school and then there's the exploring your interests, but they're not so disconnected. We just want to make sure that young people see that they very much are connected and can be connected. And I think that part is exciting, and that's something that we're looking to learn a lot from in this first summer and grow on, because it's a piece that if you're just doing ASM type programming that's interest exploration, or you're just doing academics, you could easily keep them completely separated. But this is an opportunity to build some real connections, or let the teens build some real connections between the two. So we're super excited about it.
Thanks. And can you talk a little bit more about how this partnership came about? Like what some of the things that helped you guys decide that this was something that you wanted to explore together?
Sure. So we released an RFP for a Learn and Earn. We've had several partners over the past few years, and then most recently the contract ended for our partner Summer Advantage, and so we released a RFP, and ASM was the successful respondent. And we're really impressed by their approach, their innovative approach to Learn and Earn, how we could just move it along and grow this program in a way that we hadn't considered before, and really leveraging their experience in this arena. One of the things that we really love about ASM's model for Learn and Earn this year is connecting their academics with their career pathways. And I think that's a real opportunity for our young people, so they don't just feel like they're in summer school, just sitting in a classroom all day, but they're actually learning about careers and understanding that the work that they are doing does connect to what they hope to do long term.
And I would just add that typically learning loss wouldn't have been something that we would say, oh, that's something that ASM does, but it's all of our issue to address now. It's not just schools, it's not just CHA, it's not just ASM. It's emerged as such a critical problem caused by the pandemic, and it's for all of us who work with youth to properly support youth to solve creatively. And this was an opportunity to be a part of the creative solutions to address learning loss and learning recovery. And we all support in different ways, in different spaces, different times, different approaches and that kind of thing, but collectively, the impact is collective. And so I think the more we work together, the better chances we have for some really positive results.
And I know, something else that we've talked about through the Making the Invisible Visible series is this idea of softening the walls between schools and community programs. Can you talk a little bit more, Melissa, about, you're obviously long-term partners with Chicago Public Schools, but I know that some things are evolving, given the pandemic and all of that. So I'd love for you to share more about that.
Yeah, so we have worked with Chicago Public Schools for a number of years, but the super short version of where we are now is that we're exploring more ways for how we can work together toward learning recovery for teens. Because these circumstances are so unprecedented, there's nothing really that's off the table or crazy. We've now run in-person programs, we've run remote programs, we've run in-person remote programs. There's an example at the Juvenile Detention Center where the young people are together at tables in person, but the instructor's on a screen. So we've tried a lot of new things in this past year, and there's valuable takeaways from all of them, so that we'll continue to keep adding to the new things tried, and there's not going to be any version of returning to normal, because normal won't be the same. It'll be our regular in-person program with all of the things that we've learned. But again, the short version for CPS is we really are looking differently at ways that we can partner to address learning recovery, things that we would not have necessarily done in the past.
Thank you. And Jeremy, I know, as we think about, we know we need to continue re-engaging young people, and we know we need to engage even more young people. We really want to scale up the number of teens we serve. What do you think we should be focused on?
Well, I think there's an opportunity to focus on so much, but I know we have to be strategic in terms of what roles we're providing in our communities, and how we can advocate for kind of what's 3.0. I think looking at youth serving organizations, I think we've all prioritized thinking about social justice issues for many years, and we try to build our programs on assumptions about increasing equity. Now, our entire nation is at an inflection point of how do we address systemic racism? And I think as out of school time providers, we have a role to play directly in advocacy and in thinking about how we showcase the successes we've already had and think about expanding those. But that goes with saying that all of us operate within environments that there is systemic racism. And we have, and that's a part of the fabric and it's a type of, it's something that we have to kind of tear apart and rebuild. And so, I think there's so many opportunities to, elevate the voice of our youth who are telling us what are the obstacles that they face, what are the barriers that need to be removed, and how do we exercise, that voice to help us advocate for those changes. I also think in our sector, there is a real opportunity to think about how we own our own evaluation. I can't tell you the number of grants that I've had to write in the past where I was supposed to somehow, as a system, show that I was going to contribute to youth graduating from college. I believe that our programs do help that, but I don't think we are the right owners of that metric. I think there are others who own that metric. And I think so many of us as organizations, we know the value that we provide to youth. We know the changes that we make in their lives, and we have ways to demonstrate that our programs are doing that through the mentorship that we offer, the skills we help them develop, and the ways that we help them find the next thing to do. And I think there's so much opportunity for us to showcase our own data and how we know what we do is successful. So those are the kinds of things that I'm really thinking about, both at Chicago Public Library and how we develop partnerships to help us along that way in terms of making progress in those areas.
I love that. And as a researcher, I could not agree with you more. I am on your side on that one. You actually got to the last topic that I want to talk about. And so one of my favorite quotes, Deb already mentioned it, but it's from the Center for Developing Adolescents, and it's that adolescents are a force for good. And while you may not see that on the news in Chicago, those of us who live here, who work with youth or support organizations that work with youth, we know this. We see this every day in programs in our neighborhoods. And so as we think back on last year, and it's one of the most the activism of young people around racial and social justice. So I would love to close by having each of you take, a minute or two here to talk about how you're approaching equity and social justice at your organization. And Jeremy, I'll go ahead and have you go first.
Well, I believe that we're doing it in many ways. One, we continue to engage with youth and increase our outreach. Also thinking about our library program is not just our summer internship, but the opportunities that we offer to youth in all of our library branches. Chicago Public Library has 81 branches across the city, so we actually are in every neighborhood in the city. And we have dedicated teen library staff in more than 40 branches right now, and we're continuing to expand that. So I think we also, as a library system, we have to account for both how we continue to develop anti-racist work and conversations within our system with our staff, and then figure out what is the role that the public library as a city agency of Chicago plays in the larger ecosystem of Chicago in terms of anti-racism and developing equity. I think the library, in its best form, I like to think it's a palace of the people. It's a place for people to learn, to have free access. And at Chicago Public Library, more than 2 years ago, we removed fees for late books. So, we removed a major barrier for many people to be able to renew their library cards and be able to get access to information both in libraries and on our virtual platform, through ebooks and those kinds of things. So I hope that Chicago Public Library is able to, play a key role going forward in many ways in terms of thinking about how we increase equity in Chicago.
And how about the Chicago Housing Authority, Ebony?
Really proud of a partnership we had last summer with the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation of Greater Chicago. It's an organization that trains some of our young people as racial healing practitioners to help their communities heal and produce actionable change. And I was very grateful to participate in one of their youth-led sessions where they were talking about, where I learned about the difference between community aid and philanthropy. And so this was something that young people learned about, and we're teaching other young people, and they are able to go into their communities and solve issues that are most important to them. So very hopeful to be able to collaborate with them again. And we also work with Chicago Public Schools on an intergenerational project called You Are Not Alone. And so we connected some of their young people with our older adults that live in our senior properties as a way to get those two groups to interact. During the pandemic, a lot of how we connected with one another changed, but the need to socialize remained the same. And so young people called the seniors, they touched base with them, they found out what their needs were, and were able to develop real friendships out of that. We also had a partnership with the museum, the Smart Art Museum at the University of Chicago, and we've been working with them probably for the past 5 summers. They have an artist named Njideka Crosby. She's a 2017 MacArthur Fellow, and she worked with our teens on creating a community engagement proposal and to really get their perspective on how we can get the community to visit art exhibits. So they did a lot of research around themes of home, community engaged artwork, racial justice, cultural legacy and assimilation, and other collaboration techniques. So definitely a partnership that we look forward to continuing this summer.
Hey, Ebony, quick question. What was the name of the organization and training program that you did the racial healing work with?
It's called Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Greater Chicago. So TRHT.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
And Melissa, you want to home?
Yes, so first of all, Jill, what you said before, yes, absolutely. Youth are a force for good. I love that quote too. And I think, so teen voice is central to everything that we do. And I think it has to be, or else they're not going to choose to participate in our programs. So when I reflect back on the ways that, the light that was shined on longstanding issues of deep-rooted systemic racism and the fight for social justice in the past year, amidst all of the really painful and disgusting events that happen, what has helped most, I think, is knowing that our programs provide a space and a time and support for teens to express and reflect their realities and opinions. And they do it via any of their content areas, whether it's a dance program or a creative writing program or a videography program or photography program. It just comes out in every single content area. And I think this has always been the case, but I think this year we've had a kind of renewed energy for elevating their voices because there's so much that's coming out, and it's so important that we help give them a platform to put what they think and how they're experiencing all of that out there. And one example is at our most recent board meetings, the last couple, we've shared teen work that's really spoken to how teens are experiencing this time. And one of them was a series of paintings created by one of the programs that was called Say Their Names. And it was just beautiful. It was teens had written about why they chose to paint different victims of police violence. And then we also shared a writing that a young person did about how she had experienced the pandemic this year. And I think as much as we can do that, it's like you said, they're a force for good and they can speak for themselves and teach us so much. And, they're gaining something from doing all this great work. I think it behooves us and everybody for us to put it out there for everybody to see. I always feel like I'm really privileged that I get to see so much of it. And sometimes I feel like if we don't share it, we're sitting on all this really valuable, rich, I could use a million different adjectives. We got to share it more. And I think Jeremy said something about as an organization, we also are looking to be more critical of ourselves as an organization. And then we've also added some programs that have more of an explicit social justice focus. So that's kind of how things have gone. But again, I can't tell you, I think I've gotten through this year in large part knowing that we're providing the space for teens to express everything, their realities, what they're going through this year. Makes you want to come to work the next day.
Well, I love all of this. I have a soft spot in my heart for older youth and obviously for Chicago. So I could stay on here all day with you guys. I would love to, but we are going to wrap this up, and there's so much to unpack that luckily we can do that now in our breakout sessions. So we have 3 topics. Melissa's going to be hosting a discussion on using program data and youth voice to drive innovation. Ebony and Jeremy are going to have a discussion on broadening youth partnerships and the role of public agencies in community learning and development ecosystems. And then our partners at the Forum for Youth Investment, Alicia and Catherine, are hosting a breakout session on the power of meaning making in the adolescent brain. So there's a link if you want to read more about those. And just so you know, we aren't coming back together. So once you finish your breakout session, you are done for the day. I just want to say thank you to the panelists again for being here, and thank you to all the participants who joined us today. This was a lot of fun for me anyway.
If anyone's having any difficulties entering your breakout room, I'm happy to help get you in there. Feel free to just drop in the chat where you would like, which room you'd like to enter.
Also, I'm re-entering the link to the descriptions of the breakout if you need to see that, and it's in the chat box. So you'll be able to place yourself into a breakout room by just clicking the breakout button and then selecting the breakout room that you'd like to go to.